So let's talk about our attack vectors. What's your Victor, Vector? Or what's your vector, Victor? I can't remember the phrase. It's a famous line from a famous movie. I also like Shields, Red Alert. It just sounds kind of nerdy and geeky. What we mean by attack vectors is basically what are the different paths that attacks will come from. Well, we all know the most common ones. Computers, Dale. Yeah, you're right. Computers, they'll come from a computer, from a cell phone. Well, guess what? There are so many things that are taking place in technology that it's hard to keep up. And you have to start considering these locations or these different paths. One of them being cloud environments, as well as virtual machines. There's a big push right now to put things on the cloud, and that's great if you want to take advantage of that. But just know that not only do you have to be worried about the communication between you and the cloud provider, but what is their environment like as far as being attacked? The same thing applies to VM or virtual machines. We're always worried about making sure that the physical hosts are good. What about the virtual machines and the hosts that those machines are on? Or better yet, what about the virtual machines that are in the cloud? Yeah, I see I really confused you now, huh? Unpatched OSs and software. I know everybody's really religious about patching. In some cases, not really religious. Some companies are afraid to apply a patch. Let me tell you, first of all, when it comes to Microsoft and their patches, if it's a critical update, you do not hold back on those things. Critical updates are typically there to protect you from what we refer to as a zero-day attack. We'll talk about that in just a second. But just know that unpatched software is a big issue for us. That may be where one of the paths that they get in on. If you haven't patched a particular server because you have an older piece of software that can't handle the newest Surface Pack, you need to reevaluate that situation. Same thing with software. Yep, we need to keep up on our updates. I think one of the most notorious has been Adobe recently, right? Adobe's had a lot of security issues, vulnerabilities and exploits that could be taken advantage of. I also like to make sure, I talk to people and say, look, that's great. You're updating your OS. You're updating your applications. When was the last time you updated the software or / firmware on your routers and your switches or your BIOSes? I know typically we think, oh, BIOS, well, or routers and switches, that's only going to add more features. Not necessarily. Sometimes they're fixing vulnerabilities. We'll show you when we do vulnerability research that there's places you can go and say, show me the vulnerability on this particular network interface card. And if it hasn't been patched, you're going to be in trouble. Social networking. We've talked about that in detail now. Again, this is going to be one of my primary ways of researching you and your company is looking at the social networking, see what people are talking about, see if I can make a connection for social engineering to a disgruntled person. Internal users. We've hit that one. Internal users are a big attack vector, as well as hacktivism. We'll get into more detail on hacktivism, a little bit closer view. Right now, we're just going to give you a 10,000-foot view again. This is basically somebody hacking for a cause. Not for money, but for a cause. Great example of this. You would never guess that beef.com gets attacked all the time through hacktivism. Something about animal rights? Malware. We know that malware is another vector for us that can affect the attacks, as well as botnets. Botnets are really kind of interesting, very, very popular in the hacking world. Botnets is where, let's say I'm your hacker, and I've gone through and I've pwned several machines. I'm not mispronouncing that. Pwned, P-W-N-E-D. Pwned, it comes from there was a game that they released and somebody fat-fingered where it was supposed to say you got owned when you were killed by somebody. And, of course, the O and the P are really close together in keystrokes, and they accidentally put in a P, and it just kind of caught on as a trend. So if I own or pwn 300 machines, I'm going to configure those machines, and those machines, again, can be home computers or computers in a library or computers that are sitting as a kiosk machine. If I can get those machines, I'm going to use those as resources to attack Citibank and let Citibank go talk to you. Botnets are actually bought and sold on the black market as well. We also have security staffing. Do you have enough security staffing? Are you the only one and you're trying to handle a huge organization? Trust me, until companies start looking at cybersecurity as important as the day-to-day operations of IT, it almost needs to be its own department and its own budget because it's so important. The lack of security policies. We have a whole section coming up about security policies, but you need to make sure that you have these in place. And what we mean by security policies are basically rules that say if this situation occurs, this is what needs to take place. Very similar to being an adult and a parent. My kids, I've really instilled in them the concept of choices and consequences. They can make all the choices they want. They just need to understand that there's a consequence associated to that choice. Some of the consequences are good. Some of them are bad. But when we create these policies, not only do we have to point out what could happen and what the results will be, we also have to make sure we enforce them. If we don't, we're the equivalent of the parent who says, I'm going to ground you if you don't get good grades, and when they don't get good grades, you don't ground them. You don't enforce it. We also have issues with compliance with regulations and laws. A lot of companies, especially healthcare, financial institutions, they got HIPAA, there's financial institution regulations, government regulations that deal with we have to store information for so long, or we have to have backups that are stored in certain areas, maybe off-site. Different regulations. You need to make sure that if you're not following those could actually open up some vectors for you. Now, as your network grows, obviously the complexity of it grows. And anytime we deal with complexity, that creates problems. Because it becomes complex, it's hard to track, and therefore different paths into our network could be opened up. And man, this is the big one nowadays, mobile devices. The reason why this has created so many attack vectors for us is this simple reason. It's BYOD. Bring your own device, right? I get it. I understand why companies like to do it because, hey, they don't have to go off and buy you a tablet. You get to use the tablet that you've already purchased. That's great. But as an IT guy, security guy, it scares the crud out of me because I can't control it. It's your device. I have no rights to it. So I can't tell if maybe you're infected or maybe you're the one running the attack from your tablet. Or again, better yet, we go back to theft. What happens if somebody steals the tablet or someone steals the phone? How is it locked down? All these attack vectors you need to consider and make sure that you have procedures in place to handle them.